Welcome to the Infrastructure Network, where we bridge the civil infrastructure education gap. Our on-demand video education courses, captivating podcast episodes, interactive virtual events, and tailored shows are all designed to spotlight innovative solutions and professionals dedicated to fixing America's deteriorating infrastructure.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Infrastructure Network. My name is Chad Smeltzer. I am your host. Today, we have a special guest, Adam Tank, who's the co-founder and chief customer officer at Transcend. Thanks for joining me, Adam.
Yeah. Hey, Chad. Thanks for having me.
Adam, you're no stranger to podcasts, so you have your own. I know that, and I appreciate your time for joining us here on the Infrastructure Network. But tell us a little bit about yourself and how you got started in like civil infrastructure. You have a pretty in-depth history, but let's see how where you got into that. Not civil infrastructure, but I guess it would be just your technology for fixing infrastructure and stuff.
Yeah, sure. So I am definitely a geek at my heart and soul. So I was a microbiology major in college. And when I entered the working world, I found out that I was not at all interested in wearing a white lab coat and doing that kind of work. And I was far more interested in sales, marketing, business. And so I rapidly transitioned into more of a, call it commercial focused career. And I happened to stumble into the water industry about 15 years ago, working for what was General Electric's water division at the time. And anyone that's been in infrastructure, I would say almost any critical infrastructure, you probably have come across water-related issues, either pipes bursting, having to reroute stuff, you're digging and there's water coming up in the trenches, like whatever it is, water is a critical component of all these projects. And I fell in love with it. I fell in love with the water industry. I fell in love with the technical challenges around it. And through a series of very fortunate events over the years, have ended up founding two different companies focused on basically healing our broken water infrastructure. So one was a robotics company that focused on pipeline inspection and repair. And then our latest one, Transcend, is on better designing water infrastructure so that we're not spending our time repairing, replacing, maintaining, and building the same stuff we've built for the last 50 or 100 years, and instead are building more future-proof, resilient, sustainable water and wastewater treatment systems.
Yeah, which is huge. Now we need to pivot into this digital transformation, this new world of how we build civil infrastructure for sure. So it's great what you've been contributing to the industry and providing that value. But let's go back to like when you were a kid and growing up. Like how did that start? Where did you grow up?
So I grew up in Texas, and it's funny. I remember the first time I was introduced to the sciences and microbiology. So it was a fourth grade hand washing experiment, and the teacher had us had some kids not wash their hands, some kid washed their hands with only water, and some with soap and water. And then we came back and we basically put the germs from our hands onto these little grow plates. And afterwards, I just remember being stunned at seeing the stuff that grew after this experiment. And I really do think that my love for the sciences started there. And as I grew up throughout the years, I realized everything around us involves things that we can't see. So in my case, it was microbiology is what I was most fascinated by, but molecular science, and in particular now with water and when wastewater infrastructure, generally it's out of sight, out of mind. No one really thinks about it. But when we dig into the challenges around water infrastructure, I could bore people with statistics all day, but it used to be, and I think this still holds true, that on average, 30% of the water that is treated for consumption is lost to the environment. And that's after it leaves the treatment plant to the time it reaches your or I's home or a business or whatever, 30% of it is gone, which is just unbelievable. And when you think about it, we don't see leaking pipes all the time. We don't see all the rusted, crusty old hole-filled pipes and whatever else that's going on underground because it's buried. So for some reason, I've just always been fascinated by this concept of how things that we can't see impact us in ways that we don't typically think about. And to me, the water industry and water infrastructure is like one of the ultimate things because we deal with it. It involves our lives every single day. We all use water every day, right? It's a huge deal.
Yeah. You said something key. It's out of sight, out of mind. And nobody thinks about water and not having it at their tap or in the shower or having it readily, we have it all the time now. It's there. But if we didn't have water, what would that world really look like? That's kind of where we're heading into now. Where you're talking about germs and things, we're talking about chemicals now in the water systems, contaminating and things like that. What do you think about all that stuff that's going on with these, pods that are being, used to wash your laundry or detergents, things like that are mixing with this water? What's your opinion on some of that?
Yeah, I mean, I would say that we, when I say we, I mean ourselves as a water industry, we are sort of victims of our own success. Our success being that we do treat water and wastewater to a very high standard.
Right.
And very rarely are people getting seriously ill. Yes, it happens, and it's really unfortunate, and we're doing a best job we can to improve these things, and we have a lot of work to do. But generally, we treat the water to high standards, and most of the time, when you turn on your tap, water is coming out. I can't even think of the last time that I turned on my tap and water didn't come out. So in that sense, we're very successful. But because of that success, nobody thinks about the challenges in designing, building, maintaining all of the infrastructure that it takes to get water from some location to your house. And so in that sense, because it's out of sight, out of mind, because we don't think about it, because it's not part of our everyday, the actual infrastructure itself, people don't think about it, right? We'd rather complain about whatever our Wi-Fi or cell bill as opposed to our water bill. Like when our water bill raises, people are like, they lose their minds. And it's just hilarious because if you were to rank the most important things in your life that you spend your money on a day-to-day basis, I guarantee you water would be at the very top of that list, with the exception of maybe food in your house. But people think Wi-Fi's right. My Wi-Fi cutouts, like my life is over. It's really not. But your water cuts out, you're in really, really bad shape.
It's true. We just haven't appreciated water. I mean, that's kind of what it sounds like. We just don't value it. We don't appreciate it. So we don't have a price tag to put on it like we do our phones or our Wi-Fi and stuff like that, which is totally opposite of what we should be thinking about, right? So that's where we're running into huge issues. And, the infrastructure that we had in place for 50 years, these underground water pipes are breaking all the time. They need a lot of investment. We haven't been able to keep up with it. And, we're just dealing with the repercussions of that now. And where, we're going to be looking at technology to really advance the way we're going to be able to fix this infrastructure and this problem. Curious on going back a little bit more to did you go to college and how did you got that science, you're into science, but did you go to college for that?
I did. Yeah. I went to school, thought I was going to go to medical school. I studied microbiology. And then my senior year, I interned for General Mills the summer between my junior and senior year in food manufacturing. And when I graduated, I went to work for General Mills full time. And what I found out was, interestingly, the absence or presence of water is one of the things that has the biggest impact on the safety and quality of our food supply. And so every day, right, I was working with our sanitation teams and our engineers and thinking through what do our cleaning practices look like? How do we make sure the food we produce is of good quality, is safe for people to eat? And water was always at the forefront of it. It was either as an ingredient into the food or as a product for us cleaning all the stuff that the food and the ingredients were on. Right. And, I at the time, I didn't think a whole lot about it being so water focused. But then when I went to graduate school and got an MBA, I got to intern with General Electric's water division. I was like, oh my God, the pieces of the puzzle are now connecting. Like I see the importance of all of this. And so when I jumped into the water world full time after graduate school, I feel like it's an impossible industry to leave once you're in, because there's so much to do for, anyone. I don't care if you're a policy person, if you're a science person, you're an engineer, you're a social media person, I don't care what it is. There is a role for you in the water industry for sure. And the challenges there are way more challenges than we'll ever be able to solve in our lifetimes, Chad, and probably the next 10 generations beyond us. Like, it's just that big of a challenge. So if you're looking for a job that's, fulfilling, you get excited to get up every day and make a difference, right? That's this is the place to be. And so, when I was in school, I wish I would have studied water in school, but I ended up finding my way into it anyway. So I guess I'm just as happy.
That's funny because I was, just bringing back memories of when I was at a wastewater treatment at a water plant. When my dad was running, I was 15. I was like, man, I'm never doing this industry. I'm never going to be involved in the wastewater space ever. This is silly. Why I'm in sludge tanks? It's a gross job. Like, this is ridiculous. Yep. And then, 20 some years ago later, and I'm back in the water business, sewer business, treating grease traps in the city of Baltimore and trying to, get rid of fats, oils, and grease from clogging pipes. That was the first company I started. So interesting how, this all comes around, and, you and I have a kind of similar path, but you went to GE and you started working there, and it sounds like you developed some tech there maybe to kind of help water and sewer.
Yeah, this is it's kind of a wild story, and I'll try to keep it short. So I would anticipate that anyone listening to this is familiar with the show Shark Tank.
Yeah.
If they're not, it's a televised, basically entrepreneurship competition. People go and they pitch their ideas to investors. It's dramatized, so the investors usually like shoot down their ideas and tell them how horrible they are and all this kind of stuff. Right. Interestingly, GE, when I was there, ran an internal Shark Tank style competition.
Oh, I like that.
And they said, anyone in the company can apply, submit their idea. We'll take, it was like the top 100 or whatever, we'll down select. And then the top 10 will present to the president of GE Ventures and some of the other executives at GE. And so the idea that I had submitted was an idea that I had come across when working with many of the nation's largest water utilities in my role at GE Water, looking at investing in technologies that were in the water wastewater industry. And to the concept of leaking pipes that we talked about earlier, losing 30%, it's sad to say, but losing 30% of the water in pipes is not a huge cost to a utility. There's definitely a societal cost in that in a place where water is already scarce, we're losing 30%. We don't know where it goes. That's a big problem. But water is still really cheap. It's not like you're losing oil or gold, or name something that has an extremely, an extreme financial value to it. So you lose 30% of your water. Yes, that's bad. But from a financial point of view, okay. What I found out that utilities really needed was that when a pipe blows or bursts, or there's a significant leak, it's not really the cost of lost water that's the problem. It's the cost of fixing that pipe that's the problem, because it's extremely expensive to have to get the permits, shut down roads, bring in all the construction equipment, dig the trench, do all those things. It's extremely disruptive, and it costs a ton of money. So at the time, the person that was running innovation for the largest water utility in America said, I don't need another technology that can determine where my leaks are. I need a technology that can fix these pipes without the need to dig up streets.
Oh, yeah.
And I thought, okay, that's pretty interesting. Well, 6 months later, that competition got announced. So I presented the concept of building a robot that could go through pipes, detect leaks, and then patch them from the inside.
Ah, nice.
So insertion through a fire hydrant would navigate through drinking water pipes, and then basically deploy a patch from inside the pipe. So I ended up winning this internal Shark Tank competition at GE.
Yeah.
And that enabled me to start this business in Silicon Valley with backing from GE Ventures and then some other Silicon Valley investors. And it was a completely standalone, separate business from General Electric.
That's really cool. Wow. What an awesome story. So they supported you, and your idea got approved. You went to Silicon Valley to, that's obviously where the hotspot was for tech, and, kind of still is. And then you got the funding, and then you had to start a business, basically.
Right. Correct.
Build
That's
a
exactly
business.
Right. That's exactly right. Literally take
so
it from.
What was that like?
Yeah. Take it from idea. I mean, literally just an idea to a conception of a physical product. So I moved to San Francisco. I worked in, one of our investors had like a lab, like a maker space of sorts, where there were maybe 7-8 other companies there that were also tinkering on different types of hardware and software for different challenges. And so I hired a team of, at its peak, we had 5 people, bulk of which were engineers. And we went to work on building this first prototype, this first robot. Yeah. So had engineers that had done robotics in their past. And then interestingly, we took some ideas from the healthcare space. When you think about navigating through your veins and your arteries to deploy stents to do similar sort of patching. We took a similar concept and applied the stent concept to the robot, and then ended up building a functional prototype, which is pretty cool.
That is really cool, man. I'm excited. Wait, it just makes sense. It really does. You know, it's kind of like when those fats, oils, and grease get stuck in the sewer pipe. I was thinking similar, not using bacteria to eat it, right? You open it up. You know, that concept is similar to that, where they could open, you know, keep a place where the fats, oils, and grease couldn't adhere to, maybe, you know, stuff like that. So that's really cool that you invented this. So what happened to the business as you grew it? Did it get acquired? Like, what all happened?
It did. Yeah, it got acquired. It got acquired about 3 years after we founded it.
Okay.
And decided that was a business where, in order for it to be successful, I would have had to have raised $50 million or $100 million. I mean, because you're building hardware, selling to water and wastewater utilities, as you know, can be a challenge, especially in the US, where there's over 50,000 of them. So having to scale up a sales force or distribution channels, et cetera, is extremely complex. Just wasn't a ride that I was willing to go on. So we sold the company to a business who I felt had the balance sheet and the wherewithal to be able to do something with it. Yeah. And then I was on to my next adventure, which ultimately now is Transcend.
That's awesome, man. And then you, while you were building the business, where does social media come in, marketing and stuff like that? Is that just something you picked up over the years? How did that play into what you?
That's a good question. For that one, it wasn't as important because my focus was so heavy on the customers, and it was on getting in front of them face to face, getting out in the field, really understanding their challenges. And utility folks do hang out on social media, but they're typically only on very particular platforms. And they're also generally really intelligent. So they're either very technical or they're like out in the trenches with their hands, like just working on stuff. So they have very little tolerance for BS, which unfortunately a lot of social media is today. Yeah. And so I felt like as you go to scale, you can use social media as a channel. But for me, the most important thing that I could do in that stage of the business was go out and meet customers, especially the ones that were local to me, and just really build solid relationships. So it didn't play a huge role then. Over the course of my career, I have dabbled in social media and different things, either as like in my day job or on the side. But now at Transcend, it's a huge part of what we're doing. So maybe we'll talk like the full social media spectrum here soon. But I would say for those selling to water, wastewater utilities, or maybe even regulated space for that matter, your social presence, you have to be very particular about how you craft your social presence and how you message.
You're unique, Adam, because it's not a lot of entrepreneurs, leaders in this space that can grab all the aspects of a business, right? You've experienced developing it from proof of concept, right? Taking it to market, getting investment, launching it, getting it acquired. I mean, and you still had the experience of like building it and using your marketing and things like that a lot of leaders don't always have. They just don't have that experience of doing it, right? From kind of like a street smart university type of mindset, right? It's like from the ground, from the field to the product, so to speak. And then that's really cool. Great story, man.
It's been so much fun. Like there's definitely been just hellish, brutal days. And like we were joking before we got on, right? You're like, just living the entrepreneurial dream. And I'm like,
roller coaster, man.
12-hour days at a minimum, like just it's sort of never knowing what's going to come next. It really is just it's just constant problem solving. And it's not problem like, oh my God, this is a problem, like this is horrible. It's just it's really more challenges, like what challenges do I get to face today, and do I get to solve, and ideally with a really smart group of people around me. It's a lot of fun. It doesn't mean that it's that there aren't days where you're just like, why am I doing this? What's the point? But I think back to like sort of the first part of our conversation, every day I wake up knowing, in the case of Transcend now, like when I see someone run a design in our software for a water or wastewater treatment plant, I know that there is a small percentage that plant gets built and that people get access to clean water or treated water because of it, treated wastewater because of it.
Right.
That's what keeps me up every day. Every time I see a design come through, I'm like, we are one step closer to our mission of bringing resilient water infrastructure to people all over the world. And so regardless of like, if I had a crap meeting or read a crap conversation or I feel like crap, it just keeps me going every single day.
It does, man. We ride the wave. That's pretty much what it becomes.
Mm-hmm.
You know, the way, you know, we come out with we help a customer out, they provide them value and it works. And, you know, we're all cheering. And the next day we're putting out fires, you know,
right.
It's always something in this world, and especially when you're selling to, like we kind of alluded to earlier, you know, to government. It is a tough competitive space. I mean, we have traditional mindset, right? Established networks. We have a lot of the barriers to entry are substantial to get through because we're habitually doing things the way we've always done it. Why would we want to disrupt something that works, right? What is your perception on that? You know, trying to get through that barrier that we're kind of experienced with.
I think that the time has come, and I really think it's only been in the last maybe 2 years where that tide is starting to turn, that we cannot continue doing things the way we always have, simply because technology is now at a point where it is capable of completely changing how we've always done things. In the past, I don't think that's been true. So I often use this corollary. You might have come up with the idea of Uber 20 years ago, but you couldn't have made it happen because either the cell technology wasn't there, the connectivity wasn't there, the software wasn't there, whatever it was. So there was a window in time where it was open to be able to even create Uber and execute on Uber. Similarly, in our industry, in regulated water infrastructure, the technology hasn't gotten to the point where it can actually do the things we need it to do or want it to do.
Right.
Until recently. And so if I'm speaking specifically about what we're up to at Transcend, like it's only been recently where the computing power, the cloud computing, the ability to crunch algorithms the way that software can and produce engineering quality packages instantly that would have taken engineers days, weeks, months to create. Like it's only been recently. And it's, you know, I think once you knock down a couple of the big dominoes in this industry, big water utilities, you get some big people who really believe in this and understand how things are changing, it's going to move so quickly. We're going to wonder, like, how did we ever do things the way we did before?
Yeah. You're spot on, man. There's no doubt that we are at this pivotal moment in the next couple of years where it's just going to skyrocket, where we're implementing AI, generative AI, which you kind of already alluded to. I mean, that's what Transcend's at this point. So you're already ahead of the curve, so to speak. We're just waiting for people to really just download it and process it and not be afraid of it. That fear is what's, I think, holding a lot of us back.
Totally.
I think, do you have anything to say about that? Like,
yes. Yeah, definitely. I'm curious to get your take on this too. So as a water industry, the service that we provide to our communities has to be of good quality because we're literally consuming it. If we screw up, people die. Plain and simple. So there's very little room for error. So by nature, we have to be safety conscious and fairly conservative and a little bit risk averse, because you don't just want to try some willy-nilly treatment approach and have it not work and have a bunch of people get sick. Right. That's the worst thing that could happen to us.
Right.
My lens on it, though, is that it depends on the technology, of course, but technologies like Transcend and others that I'm aware of they actually significantly enhance your ability to de-risk your projects, de-risk your investments, de-risk your decision-making. It's not risky. Yes, it's a new innovation or new approach, but just because it's new doesn't mean that it's risky. And I would argue it's actually far less risky than what we have traditionally done for hundreds of years. So when I talk to utilities who generally are fairly risk averse for the reasons that we talked about, which are completely accurate, they rightfully should be risk averse. The pitch to them is not, hey, try this new technology just because it's new, just because it works, just because it's cool. It's how do we help you de-risk your master planning process? How do we help you de-risk your investments in your treatment infrastructure? How do we help you de-risk the fact that you've got an aging workforce that's about to retire in 5 years, and all of that knowledge is going to be lost? Yeah. And we don't have an incoming crop of talent that we're able to train effectively to fill in the gap, right? How do we de-risk that? That's what I get excited about. And that's where I think we have to look at things through a different lens in this industry. We have to think about innovation as a way to de-risk rather than bringing more risk into the world.
Yeah. You're spot on, man. It's all about taking those chances, but not, jumping all in, doing some pilot testing, doing some, experimental testing, and building it out. But if, like you said earlier, if a bigger utility's already been entrenched with these technologies, using them already, the concept's already proven, it's got backing, it's got use cases, it's valid, right? What's holding us back, right? Why aren't we just adopting it faster? But I think when I said about fear, it comes down to egos and emotions and what that entails for the person who should be accepting it, right? If you let those egos in your way of like, we don't want to go that because we already do this, we just can't get out of our habits of what we've done historically, right? It's like, well, I don't want to upset Jim over here because we've had relationships for 50 years, well, times have changed. It's time to move forward. You're stifling growth in your communities if you still rely on Jim to do business technology sitting here that can make everyone's life so much easier. It could save these communities so much money by building the infrastructure we're talking about, water treatment facilities, things like that, faster with like technology like Transcend. And I'm not promoting it, sponsoring it, but it just makes sense, right? It's just like one of those things. And that's where we need to get to in civil infrastructure. We need to get out of our emotions and away from our egos and just start opening up and bringing in that open-mindedness of technology and start adopting it. Because if we don't, we got 10 more years, and we look at the infrastructure gap, $2.6 trillion. In the next 10 years, we're looking at adding $10 trillion to our GDP because of the debt it's going to create, because our pipes are still going to fail. Everything's still going to break, right? If we don't keep up with it. So we're in a big disadvantage right now. We got to step up with technology. It's the only way we're probably going to move this country
completely
forward.
Agree. I mean, if we look at how much money has been spent doing traditional design, build, construct, operate, maintain, we're talking realistically probably trillions of dollars over the last 100 years.
Yeah.
Certainly I know on the design side, right, billions of dollars in the last 50 years.
Yeah.
And what has it gotten us? We're on a really rocky foundation. American Society of Civil Engineers rates most of our critical infrastructure around a C at best.
Yeah. And that's what we know about.
Yeah, exactly. So it's what got us here is barely keeping us here, and it's certainly not going to get us to where we need to be 10, 15, 20, 50 years in the future. So how do we change that? And I'm a technologist, so my bias is toward technology.
Right.
But you're most definitely right. Like, technology is only as good as the people behind it. So it's 100% a mindset shift that needs to occur. And I'm seeing it. I'm seeing glimpses. Like, this isn't doom and gloom. Like, I'm seeing flashes in the pan that get me really excited. We still have a lot of work to do.
It is. Look, even the way we're doing business now, you and I, look, we're doing podcasts, but we're educating the younger generations that are listening to these podcasts, because we want them to hear like the experiences we had so that they can understand what they're walking into in these career paths that they might choose in water and sewer, or, just structural engineering, for example, all this stuff. But, this is what we're doing nowadays. And I want to talk real quick. We got about five more minutes, and let's talk about what Transcend's doing. And let's talk about like the future of what Transcend is envisioning as far as how they can help communities.
So our vision is that in 20 years, every critical infrastructure project, so we're talking water, power, transportation, healthcare, telecommunications, the things that society needs to function, all of those projects will be designed automatically in the cloud by software, at least at a conceptual level.
Yeah.
the reason that we have that vision and the reason it's so important and the reason that Transcend exists is because today we spend very little time assessing all of the options that we can in the planning phase of projects and focusing on the outcomes of those decisions that we make in the planning process. And instead, we look at one or two options to evaluate. We go all the way through this long process of designing, building, and then operating. And typically from the time the decision was made to the time it's operating, the world has changed. So the thing that you end up building either doesn't function the way you want it to, or it functions the way you want it to, but it doesn't function for the needs of society in the future. And the way that we prevent that is by doing better planning. It's by being proactive instead of reactive. So to the extent that we can use software to help us make better decisions in the planning phase of these projects, it's going to lead to better outcomes. That's it at the end of the day. So in our case, it's you want to build a wastewater, or you want to design a wastewater treatment plant. Okay, let's put some project parameters into the tool. It's going to crunch on them. It's going to provide as many options as you want to evaluate, whether that's the site footprint, the capital cost of the project, the carbon footprint of the project. You can look at different treatment technologies. You can look at different variations of things. I mean, it basically gives engineers superpowers, whereas they could only done one or two designs earlier. They can now do hundreds or thousands if they so choose to find the best outcome early on. That's the goal.
Yeah, that's huge, man. And what are some of the numbers you guys have been able to, you and I talked briefly about, taking those parameters, putting them in, plugging them in, right? And then we can spit out a building, for example, in like 3 hours, I think 4 hours, something like that. What are some of your statistics and, time-wise and savings?
Yep. So I'll start with I'll begin with the end in mind. So we measure ourselves month over month, and we report to our board and our investors how many people are being impacted by designs run in our software. This business was founded in 2019, and we are almost at 200 million people who have been impacted, meaning there is a high percentage chance that they have gotten access to clean water, treated wastewater, or renewable sources of power from designs run in our software. So if we work backwards from there, it's been over 10,000 users that have designed almost 20,000 projects to date, and that's globally. So I think we've designed projects in over 80 countries.
Wow.
So almost like we're getting close to the bulk of the world, really.
Yeah.
And then if you take it now to like the input step for the software step, depending on the complexity of the site, you're probably spending on average 20 to 30 minutes putting inputs in. So these are things like how much water is coming in, how much water is going out, what does the wastewater look like, how do you plan to treat it? If you already have a site selected and maybe there are existing assets, you have to tell the software, hey, here's what's already there. So work with it or work around it when you come up with your answers. Once you press go, that's it. There's not an engineer who's opening a 3D modeling tool to create a BIM model, as an example. There's not an engineer opening AutoCAD to generate a piping and instrumentation diagram. The software is doing that on their behalf. So as you mentioned, Chad, 30 minutes to 8 hours is typically the longest that we see for a design run. You're getting basically a 30% design package or a complete conceptual design for the asset that you want to evaluate.
Seems like a no-brainer to me, man. I don't understand why engineering firms and architects aren't just using it every day. I mean, they should be, right? It's just like, wow, we can save our customers, as we mentioned before, time and money. Could you imagine going back to your customers and be like, hey, I know our hourly rates were this much, but now we've adopted technology and now we're saving you 50% on design or 40%, whatever that looks like, right? I mean, you're golden as a firm. It's over. Like, you're going to that customer.
Could be. I mean, obviously, you don't want to cut your revenues. So you could also say, hey, we're going to charge you the same, but we're going to provide 10x the value or 100x the value for the same cost.
Right.
As a utility, I'm stoked.
And I'm telling the other utilities. So you're not losing money.
Absolutely.
That's what the mindset's got to change, man. It's like that utility's going to tell the other utility, and it's going to keep compounding, and your referrals is just going to make your business bigger and faster. I mean, let's go. That's where we're at. Yep. So, Adam, it's been a pleasure, brother.
Likewise. Thanks so much for having me on.
Yeah, this is a great podcast episode. And Adam, how can people get a hold of you?
Sure. Adam Tank on LinkedIn. Personal website is adamtank.com. between those two, you probably find anything you want about me.
I think you can find anything on anybody nowadays on the internet. So I think you're good. I shouldn't even ask that a question anymore. Anyone can find you. No worries.
Yep.
But again, thank you so much for joining me in your time, spending with us and the audience. And we truly appreciate it and look forward to having you back again.
Thank you, Chad.
You have a great day.
Become part of our network today. Thank you for tuning in to the Infrastructure Network. We're dedicated to rebuilding and educating on America's infrastructure, but we can't do it without your help. Share this content, join our conversations, and let's innovate together for a resilient future. Don't forget to subscribe for more insights. Together, we can bridge the gaps and strengthen our nation. See you on the next episode.